And a few words about NVC, Nonviolent Communication. There are lots of definitions out there, but one of them includes that NVC is a way of focusing our attention to create the quality of connection that allows for compassionate giving and receiving to take place. And this is sort of like my version of, making Marshall Rosenberg's words mine. And I love this NVC Tree of Life from Bill Plotkin, NVC trainer who's no longer with us. But it highlights the 3 focus options for connection, starting with self-empathy in the root system in the tree, being curious about what's happening inside of ourselves. And then that curiosity automatically goes towards others, like empathy is one of the branches that comes out of the NVC Tree of Life, being curious about what's happening for other people. And then a separate branch is the honest self-expression branch, like what's alive in me, and communicating that with others with compassion. And so today we're focused mostly on the self-empathy side, like finding self-connection within ourselves. And I'd like to have a little bit of group discussion, like why might this be important? Why is this self-empathy thing important? Love to have a little group discussion. Jacqueline, are you able to participate? Any thoughts on why self-connection, why self-empathy is important?
Yeah, actually, that's the area of NVC that I've been practicing with a lot. And prior to identifying first, but empathizing with my own needs not being met, I think it was very difficult for me to understand other people's needs or see like a conflict or difference with someone else as a need not being met. So I know for me, I graciously practice self-empathy a lot. But then again, I'm new at NVC, so I'm hoping, because I just started this year, so 4 months ago, roughly. And so just really strong foundation for me in empathizing with my own needs not being met, helps me even let go a lot of times with anger or misunderstanding as well.
Thank you, Kathleen or Jacqueline. I love what you said, and that also resonates for me. Is like, if I'm not clear with my own internal process, how can I possibly be clear with other people's experience? And so there's definitely, well, it's kind of almost like a requirement. It's hard to give empathy if you don't have it, is another way of looking at it. Yeah, it would make empathy kind of a forced intellectual thing unless you've given it to yourself. And that's why the root system of the tree, metaphorically, is so important, right? It's sort of like the branches of the tree would have no nutrients without the root system. And
yeah, great. It's a great analogy.
Yeah. And the roots, going back to Marshall's quote, right? The roots are getting their nutrients from the ground. So there's definitely a beautiful metaphor there of connecting to nature. And so continuing on. So here's a summary of the 4 components of nonviolent communication: observations, feelings, needs, and requests. Some people see them as steps. And when you're starting the practice, that might be a great way of looking at it, as a set of steps to take when we're looking at the world. the steps, basically looking at them one at a time in sequence can also be super helpful when we're triggered, right? So giving us a little bit of structure for our practice. And a lot of each one of those 4 components can be confused with their opposites. So we could probably spend, a whole workshop talking about differentiations of those 4 components. But what we'd like to do, or at least the experiment that I'm trying today, is to kind of demonstrate what those 4 components are with an example as we do a 4-direction circle. So that's the intention. So I'd like to so start thinking about, if you have something in real life, for those of you that have some NVC experience, if you're willing to share, with the group, something that we could work together on. Not quite yet, but we'll get there. And so going back to Marshall's quote, choosing to have my connections flow from or my actions to flow from connection with nature. So let's start by paying some attention to the Earth's rotation in the 4 directions. So this is, sort of where we're starting. So we're going to use the Earth as a guiding metaphor for being fully human. Sort of like, hey, we came from the Earth, and there might be some useful concepts there. So the Earth's spin results in this magnetic field, creating the 4 cardinal directions. And so we're defining a practice of mapping those NVC components to this 4-direction circle. So you could imagine finding a wild or semi-wild place and drawing this circle on the ground, or even finding like trees and rocks that might represent the 4 directions. And it's not super important to have it be exact, but sort of having a basic understanding of, where the sun rises and where it sets can help you set this up. And we would put the observations in the east. It's the first component of NVC, and it's also where the day starts. Is usually seen by the sunrise in the east. In the south, you would have feelings. You imagine maybe it being the warmest time of day, and you might be feeling hot. or you might have some charged emotional experiences inside. And so imagining continuing this metaphor of the 4 directions mapping to the 4 times a day, and you might consider dusk the place of needs, the place of curiosity and imagination, where we imagine why we're having a feeling, going into that place of connecting to the part of us that's having an experience. And then finally, we tune in to our requests in the north, and you might envision this being midnight, right? And so maybe the elders of the village are taking care of the community by setting up a set of systems and making requests of the community. So maybe even making agreements with the other community partners. But the requests that we're going to focus on today is requests of yourself. Like, would I be willing to maybe ask how this is landing, or would I be willing to ask for a reflection, or would I be willing to walk away from this conversation? And also making space for judgments as they arise. So judgments are also part of the NVC process, acknowledging, it's almost like an observation. Hey, I have a story of what's going on, and this is what's happening. So as you build this circle somewhere in nature, then you might imagine stepping into each one of those 4 directions, right? You have this circle on the ground and then you step into it. So what I'd like to do to demonstrate how to use this circle with basic NVC is to, I'd like to find one of you who's willing to work with this, and we basically step into the circle, and we'll start with a review of the 4 directions, right? The 4 components of NVC, and I'll help you along the way. And then we'll, think of an issue that's up for you. Like, I don't know, it doesn't, we're looking for something on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being like the worst thing that could ever happen to you in life. Looking for something maybe 5 or a 6 in level of intensity, something that we can work with here. Like an example might be, I don't know, I have an agreement with my housemates on who takes the trash out, yeah, so something along those lines. Or, maybe you had an agreement to meet for coffee with someone and they didn't show up. And you want to, process what's going on. So does anyone here have something that you're willing to work with here in the group? And I will work with you along the way. And it would help if someone with a little bit of NVC experience. And I know Jacqueline, are you up for doing that?
Yeah, I think I could give it a try.
Awesome, thank you. And can you give me kind of a short synopsis of your situation? Just
Sure. So I'm a teacher. I teach high school at a place where my students are high needs. Many of them have fallen behind in their academics, and so they're put in a special environment where I'm at. Many of them have bad behavior. I don't want to say bad, but challenging behaviors that make it difficult for them to work with. So sometimes when I, interact with them, maybe I set off a trigger or something for them and they get angry or express themselves in ways that are uncomfortable for me.
mm-hmm.
And it gets tricky. It gets tricky for me. And that unfortunately happens more than I would like for it to happen.
Beautiful.
Yeah, so that might be a good
work.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks, Jacqueline. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to share some slides, and I'll help guide you through the process, and we'll work together on it.
Thank you.
And if something isn't clear, feel free to ask. All right. So we have our 4 direction circle drawn on the ground. So this is kind of a virtual thing, but imagine that we have this 4 direction circle drawn on the ground, and now Jacqueline, you're going to stand in the middle of the circle. So imagine that you're standing in the middle of the circle and you're facing the east. And what we're doing here is you're going to face each direction and verbally just explain your understanding of the 4 components. And so wondering if, and the first one is observations. Can you give a sense for what observations mean to you? Like, what's your understanding of observations? In your own words. Go ahead and unmute yourself. And
Um, I think I understand observations as facts that can be captured on a camera. So there's no feelings or interpretations. It's just a very neutral visual of
Yeah,
events. Okay.
beautiful. Yeah, in your own words. That's perfect. And so now you would turn clockwise and you would face the south. And in your own words, you know, describe your understanding of feelings.
I'm trying to physically turn as well. Feelings are, and this is where it gets a little tricky sometimes for me.
Yeah.
I differentiate feelings from emotions as feelings like hunger, thirst. They're sensations, I guess, that, or maybe not sensations, but feelings are without a narrative. So I could feel maybe angry or upset, but it doesn't, I haven't put that story around yet. But
Yeah.
I'm not sure if I have that idea right.
Yeah. And how about can I add to it just to, yeah, so feelings tell us the level of satisfaction of our needs. The feelings sort of give us a sense of how well our needs are being satisfied. They're kind of like the lights on the dashboard of your car. They might be red or green, maybe even yellow. So it's a spectrum of possibilities. And so feelings have intensity to them. Yeah. Thank you, Jacqueline. And we're just reviewing. So now let's move. Let's see. Let's go from the south, facing the south. Now we're going to face the west and getting in touch with our needs. So what's in your own words, just your basic understanding of what needs are?
I'm still learning this, so I have to refer, but you said my own words. I
Yes.
usually refer to like a list.
Okay.
One that comes up for me a lot is my need for connection. So that one I remember for sure, but the other needs I'd have to look up. And even in my workspace, that is the dominant need of most of us, is our need for connection. Yeah.
Yeah. And how about I add a little bit to that? So yeah, my understanding of needs, or at least my favorite definition, is life energy in me seeking fulfillment. So needs are, they're like our intrinsic motivation. So the things that motivate me to do things, like connection, might motivate me to call Michelle on the phone and, hey, Michelle, you up for, so it's like an intrinsic motivation, and we'll go into a little bit more depth later. And the important thing about needs is they're independent of strategy. So they're independent of a person, location, action, time, or object. So it's that intrinsic motivation that's independent of a person, location, action, time, or object. And there's a nice little acronym there, Plato. And again, we'll go into more depth. So Jacqueline, you're facing the west, and you just summarized for yourself, your understanding of needs. And now, let's see, we'll go back to this little animation thing. So you're facing the west, and now you're going to turn and face the north. And so on the north, that's where the requests are. So give your understanding of what requests are. In your own words, just, whatever understanding you have of it right now, and I'll help you out.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I'm gonna need a lot of help on this one. So for requests, I know that they need to be very clear and very like, I guess, see, but then it doesn't match the needs. But from my understanding, they're concrete. This is what I need. Can you do it? So the request is asking.
I think you just muted yourself. I can't hear you. Could you unmute yourself?
Sorry, yeah, it's because my alarm went off right now. So for, what is that called? The requests that I think I understand them, that they're concrete and something that someone can do, like, now at that moment.
Clear,
clear and
present,
doable.
and doable. Yeah. So it's, clearly asking for what might make life wonderful for you. And so they're clear, they're present. Yeah, and we can spend a whole hour talking about that. But yeah, that's beautiful. So you've faced all four directions from the middle of the circle. And now we're going to go into a little bit more detail as to your, so now, like basically as short as you're facing the north, what's your work statement? If you could give short, like, title for, what you shared earlier, that would be a beautiful way to just, summarize your work statement. You up for doing that?
Yeah, I think so. So what, I'm not quite sure, what is work statement? Just like kind of like a title for
Yeah. You mentioned your students, and some situation in which there's some emotions flowing. Could you just summarize that issue that you already summarized it for us, but now you're standing in the circle.
Sure.
And you're letting go ahead.
So maybe working with unhappy students, working with dissatisfied people.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, the title of your work is working with unhappy or dissatisfied students.
Okay.
Yeah. And and I'll walk with you along the way, so no worries.
Okay.
So going back to the screen sharing, and I will give you these slides after we complete this process. So whoever's still here can get a copy of the slides. So now you're going to step on the outside of the circle. So stepping slightly outside of where you placed, your marker or your stone for the east. And you're going to identify observations. So for a specific, what I would suggest that you do is think of the last time, a specific last time that this happened. And, and again, think of the camera analogy. And the invitation is for you to identify your observation of one concrete, real thing that happened to you. And picking the last one might be a good place to start, the last one. Could you do that?
Sure. So the last recollection, a student's voice was, it was terse, language was terse.
Do you remember what he said? Or she? Was it?
Yeah, it's a he. Yeah, he said, do you not see my stuff? Do you not see my stuff? Like, repeated that over and over.
Okay.
And
he
I
repeated it
answered,
how many times? Do you not see my stuff?
I want to say about a good 5 or 6.
Okay.
times.
So
Yeah.
more than four.
Yeah.
You're
So
not
just kept
clear.
repeating the same phrase.
Yeah.
Right.
Can you not see my stuff? Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So that's your observation. Yeah. Do you
And
see how
then
concrete that is?
yeah, yeah.
And if we had a camera, we could record that happening, right?
hmm
Yeah. So that's your observation. Beautiful.
And so my feels, could I go into the feels now?
Well, yeah. Let me share the screen, just so that we're all tracking with the same thing. So you said that facing the middle of the circle, standing in the east. So you're standing in this energy of observation, facing the middle of the circle. So now you're going to walk toward the south and stand in the south of your circle, facing the middle of the circle. And from this place, you're standing into your feelings, right?
hmm
So so I invite you to do that. So stand in this new place around the circle and identify, what are the feelings that are coming up for you, given that this student said that, at least 4 times. Can't you
hmm
see my stuff? Can't you see my stuff? So what's the feeling that's coming up for you?
Um, let's see. I know felt I felt challenged. I'm not sure if that's a feeling. I felt unheard
Okay.
because I
Can
kept
I help a little
answering.
bit? Yeah, so
Sure, sure.
challenged and unheard. Um, I might call those like evaluations, maybe judgments, but we have superpowers. We can translate those into feelings and maybe even feelings and needs. But right now we're focused on our feelings. We're standing in the south, looking towards the center. And does a word like, I don't know, annoyed or uncomfortable,
Uncomfortable. Yeah, I immediately got uncomfortable.
immediately uncomfortable, maybe feeling some body tension? So
Yeah.
that's where sensations and emotions and feelings kind of work together.
hmm
You might have felt some tightness in your belly, or and maybe your breathing got shallow. I
hmm
mean, I don't know.
Yeah, I did. I got a little bit nervous, maybe somewhat threatened. I wasn't sure, what was going to happen
Yeah,
next.
yeah. So the feeling of nervousness. You maybe you felt some nervousness. Yeah. So that's a good feeling. Yeah, maybe anxiety or so. Being perfect isn't really important at this stage, but we've narrowed down to, uncomfortable or nervous.
hmm
Why don't we go with nervous, since you kind of use that word naturally?
Okay.
Yeah, so you're feeling nervous, and so as you're standing in the south, you identified your feeling of nervousness, and now you're gonna, work your way over to the west on the outside of the circle, standing in your needs, looking towards the center. And now we're going to work with identifying your needs. Like, and the question is, like, imagine why you felt nervous. Like if you can access your imagination and just let
hmm
it wander a little bit, and maybe tune into why you were feeling nervousness.
hmm
You want to
I
speak
think,
from that place?
yeah, I think it was my need for understanding and maybe trust or respect, consideration.
Yeah,
Those are some of the needs.
yeah, consideration, trust. Um, when you use the word respect, is that related to, wanting to have the consideration of your needs as many as just as much as his, like having space for everyone's needs?
Um, I guess it's kind of tricky to say my needs because I mean, there's rules, and he crossed it's the school rules. They're not my rules, they're school rules.
Hmm.
And so I just was trying to make him aware that, hey, these are the expectations of the school, and this is how I need to respond when you don't meet those expectations.
Yeah. Thanks for
Because
sharing that, Jacqueline. Yeah.
yeah. So I felt, so it's not really, I don't know, it's I guess in some ways it's my need that he trusts that maybe I'm communicating the truth to him, but this really is the school policy. I'm not making this up. Yeah.
Yeah, I hear you. And is it okay if I continue working with this
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
here? As we'll get a little bit clearer later on in our workshop. But, when you associate it with a school policy or with the other person, then we're starting to get into the strategy realm.
Okay.
And so what we want to, I think we were a little bit closer earlier when you said that consideration was up for you. Consideration or your need for trust was up. And so we're identifying that heart energy in you seeking fulfillment without having him be in the picture, or without
Okay.
having the school policy be part of the picture.
Okay.
Is that helpful? So there's something inside of you that's welling up for satisfaction, right? This part of you that wants everyone's needs to be considered. Yeah, so consideration and trust, maybe a sense of mutuality.
Yeah, I like that word.
Yeah, mutuality, where both his needs and your needs matter.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Does that feel like we're close? We're identified that energy that's up for you, mutuality, consideration.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, thanks for being willing to work with me on this. And so you're still standing in your needs on the west side of your circle, facing the middle. And now you're going to work your way toward the north. And so you stand on the outside of the circle in your north, facing the center. And you're going to get clear with at least one request. So as you stand, in your north, is there anything, as you tune in to your needs for consideration and mutuality, is there a request of yourself that bubbles up?
So requests for myself is to be more present. I know in that moment when I realized, okay, this is not going to resolve, I wanted him to go, I had asked him to respect my boundaries, that, I felt uncomfortable. So I'm not sure that really worked as a request for NVC.
Yeah, it could, and
Okay.
we can come up with several. But for right now, for this process, I would like for you to come up with a request of yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And what I heard you say something like, yeah, I'd like to become more present.
Mm-hmm.
And so, present's kind of like a need, but to make it's kind of a wish at this point, right? I wish I were present. But to make it a clear, doable request, a present, clear, doable request, let me just give you an example, and then it'll you can pick the one that works the most for you. Yeah. And just to summarize, yeah, I'm feeling some nervousness around my need for consideration and mutuality. Would I be willing to take some deep breaths?
Mm-hmm.
Like we did in our warm-up? Would I be willing to take some deep breaths, breathing in the sky and exhaling and being grounded in the earth? So that's just one example, right?
Mm-hmm.
let me give you a couple other options and then you can hone in on. So another example might be, would I be willing to ask for a timeout? Or something like that. Would I be willing to get some help from another teacher? Or would I be willing to ask him to step away, I don't know, to go to a corner or something? Not sure. So yeah, so getting clear with the request of yourself, what sort of what comes up for you as a...
Yeah, I know at that moment I had asked for a timeout, and then I also asked for help. So the timeout he just completely ignored, and then the getting help part was helpful. And then I think if something that happens again, I want to do the request that I would be willing to take some deep breaths.
Yeah.
I think that might have helped me. Even just focusing on the breaths probably could help me detach from the language, that was being used, and the, how close he's kind of getting, I think would be what I would be willing to try for the next time.
Yeah, and I like that. I like that as a first request, because it's near the roots of the tree, right?
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned earlier the wish. I wish I could be present. So the deep intentional breathing could help you to get present,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah, and I
So
can see this anytime I have a conflict with it. It doesn't even have to be with a student, but just taking that step. And I like how you put the request as a request of myself, because I don't think I've heard it that way before. I always think of a request as you're asking of someone else to do something. So
yeah,
this is, I like this idea better, because, obviously we can't control what other people do, but I can definitely, I have control over what happens in here.
yeah. Thanks for acknowledging that. And I think that that request part came out of my own practice, my own self-empathy practice, realizing that I wanted something, right? Mm-hmm. So I have feelings, I have some needs. So what's a request I could make of me? And so as I was journaling, this phrase came up over and over again. And the phrase was, would I be willing to? So I came up with an acronym, WIBW. Would I be willing? And the willingness is huge, because sometimes I'm willing, but I choose not to do it. So just acknowledging the willingness sometimes is enough. Mm-hmm. Like a follow-on request to the breathing might be, would I be willing to ask for help? Right? And maybe no one's available. So I'm willing to ask for help, but no one's around. So then, what's next? So we've completed one rotation of the circle, but you can imagine, being able to continue around the circle in your self-empathy practice, going, around the circle yet again, because there might be another observation that comes in, like when he approached, maybe he got close to me, he got within a foot of my face, and that might be a separate experience, right?
Okay, so you're suggesting the individual observations kind of take it through that circle.
Yes.
Okay.
I call them experience threads, and to work with one observation at a time, and then you connect with your feeling. One feeling is best, if you can highlight like the most resonant, the word that most accurately represents your feelings, and then connect with the word that most accurately represents the needs energy. And, you know, on the request side, identifying the request that most naturally fits is also good. Like you have this wish for presence. So I loved your request of, would I be willing to take a deep breath? Because that would give you that immediate like presence and self-connection. So
yeah, and the grounding. Yeah, definitely. Thank you.
So thanks, Jacqueline. And is it okay if we do a little bit of debrief with the larger group? Yeah. And I love what we shared, Jacqueline, and yeah, and so this was a great example of stepping through the 4-direction circle with just, you know, pure NVC stuff. So wanting to hear any feedback, like how was that for you, or do you have any questions? Because after this process, we're going to extend it, and we're going to be adding some new things based on Plotkin's work of Wild Mind. But same circle, but we're adding more stuff. So any questions about this process? And this process is really rich. And I highly encourage you to try it out. It can be super powerful way. And you know what's unique about this is you're actually embodying, you know, you're moving your body from one place in the circle to a different place of the circle. So I found that practice helps to shift something like, I'm not sure what the right word, but it's like a tangible shift of energy of changing your location on your circle. So there's some value to that, and we'll see how beautifully it fits in with the four facets of wholeness from the Wild Mind model. So any final questions about this process? Like, and maybe even, hey, did you enjoy it? So raise your hand if you enjoyed the process that we went through, that you found some value in it. Seeing a couple hands. Michelle raised her digital hand. Cool. All right. Anything else that needs to be said about this process? Because we're going to build on it. One thing that I think I want to highlight, because you know, Jacqueline did. I loved how you showed up, Jacqueline, in doing the circle. And you mentioned earlier that you've been practicing NVC for like a year. And that's a beautiful time, because it's also, you're also demonstrating sort of like the knowledge and the skills required to be able to stand in the 4 directions, right? So reviewing what those were, you need to have kind of a sense for what the 4 components are, right? And what they mean to you. And to be able to verbalize that, there's value in taking, because so many of us, I'm speaking of myself, we live in our head, right? And to actually verbalize our understanding out loud, there's value to it. Sometimes we learn from our own words as we speak them. So that's one thing. So we need some basic understanding of the 4 components. And to know, you know, what's the difference between an observation and evaluation, like feelings versus thoughts, or feelings versus evaluations. That's another key distinction. The difference between needs and strategies. That's a huge, people confuse needs and strategies all the time. So that's also kind of important. And then the request side, knowing the difference between a request and a demand, or whether a request is clear and doable or not. Is it present? Is it present centered, like in the now? Are you asking something that can be done now? So that's the other element of requests. So so if you're wanting clarity with those basic components, this series could be helpful for that. But also I have a series called Free Yourself from Reactivity, which is all about the base of the tree in the NVC world. The other thing that Jacqueline demonstrated is kind of like, if you haven't quite learned the language of feelings and needs, it helps to have a list. So as you're learning, printing out a list of feelings and printing out a list of needs can be super helpful. So I'm going to share with you the slides, and there's actually some links where you can get your own lists of feelings and needs. So I'm going to share the slides in a PDF format for everyone that's currently attending. So if you look in your chat window, you should be able to see a file there. And now we can transition to the next phase of our workshop.